It's good to be back. Haven't done a video for a while, for a few days anyway. But I've been having to keep my feet up because I got some swelling going on in my legs, so I can't be sitting for too long. But I want to go over this episode 42, 143 slides of proven innocence, part 5 with RJP. They're going to talk a little bit about the bugging of the gravesite, which they keep throwing out how illegal that was. When the courts proved that it wasn't illegal, it's not illegal to this day. But they don't. They understand why that Doug Mulder did that. Why did Doug Mulder call the two lead detectives for the defense? He called them to stage the theatrics because he didn't have much to go on to save Darlie. So he had to plant a seed of, look, these two cops, they pled the fifth. Darlie must have something to hide. Theatrics. Matter of fact, Doug Mulder tried to play a Greg Davis. Or Greg Davis is able to accurately plant a seed that actually grows. It grew into a fine tree of justice for Devin and Damon Routier. Doug Mulder he's trying to plant that seed because he didn't have anything that said that his client didn't commit this crime. He had nothing. He knew better than to bring Labor and Epstein up. He knew better. He knew he didn't have anything. He knew going in he didn't have anything. That's why he said, well, I think we ought to implicate Darren. That might give him a little bit of a reasonable doubt. But, the family knew the law better than he did and said, no, we don't want you to do that. So we're going to listen here a little bit, and then I want to correct Tara on something.
A lot of weird things like that with my case, different relations and stuff like that. But anyway, I seen that name, and
he's talking about where Karen Neal from across the street, Terry Neal, her husband, who died in 2007, was actually related to Detective Chris Frosh as a cousin.
Thought I'd tell folks about that. I don't think a lot of people know that. Anyway, go ahead, Bonnie. Oh, go ahead, Tara.
Can I just say about that second paragraph? So it says that they chose to invoke the Fifth Amendment privilege at trial in relation to the covert recording, but that's not the case.
That's the case. In relation to the covert recording, this is the key words. In relation to the covert recording, the Fifth Amendment that they took, because they didn't want to self-incriminate themselves. They didn't want to take any chance of that. So they did not have to speak on anything that had to do with the planning of the bug, who put it there, how long it was there. No questions about the bug. None. In relation to the covert recording. In relation. So she's wrong here.
Actually, Jimmy Patterson, he did testify somewhat.
Yeah, he testified. He was asked questions by Mulder. Mulder wanted to put this in at the right time, too. He was asked questions that didn't really make any sense, and then he just threw that. You're going to jail because you did this. All right? Jimmy Patterson answered any other question that didn't have to do with anything with the bugging. But listen to what she says here.
And then obviously wouldn't testify about the recording. But actually, Chris Frosh didn't testify at all to any.
You know why Chris Frosh didn't testify at all to anything? Because he wasn't asked any other questions. The defense dismissed him. They thought that they had all they needed to look, these two cops, they took the fifth. Look at this. So they didn't ask him anything else.
Anything. So anything that he did in the case, he didn't testify to anything.
He wasn't asked about anything that he did in the case. He wasn't asked. If they asked him, he would have.
If you read the transcript of his testimony, you know, it's semantics. It's basically court proceedings. It's not. There's no information. He gives no information about what he saw that night, what he did.
He's not asked any question either. He's not on his cross-examination. He was not asked any question whatsoever. Now, had he been asked a question, you know, what time did you arrive there? If he took the 5th, you'd have an issue. But he wasn't asked anything. They didn't want him on the stand to answer questions about the crime. They wanted him on the stand to try and make it look like, hey, he's got something to hide.
Did, who was doing what was said. There's nothing. He literally goes up on stand. By the time he goes up on stand, yeah, he just says absolutely nothing about his involvement in the whole case, and he's
not asked anything. He's not asked anything. If he was asked, he had his attorney with him. If he was asked anything about the case that had nothing that didn't have to do with the bugging, then he would have answered those questions, and the judge would have made him answer those questions.
Meant to be, you know, the second sort of lead investigator under Jimmy Patterson. So we got like half testimony from Patterson and then no testimony from Chris Frosh.
You got any question that didn't have anything to do with the bugging wasn't answered. You got to remember, it was the judge that suggested, hey, if you don't know anything about this federal law about wiretapping, maybe you should get an attorney and just plead the 5th. For now, on that subject only. So, if Chris Frosh didn't answer any questions or talk about the case at all, it's because he wasn't asked.
Well,
so actually, it wasn't just in regards to the recording, is what I'm saying.
Absolutely was just in regards to the recording, and it says so right here. Now he's on the stand with Richard Mosty, who is a Kerrville longtime resident. So when people want to crack on the people of Kerrville as if they're overly conservative in the Bible Belt while Darlie's sending out scriptures to people and Danelle's praying to God, Richard Mosty was born and raised in Kerrville, and that was Darlie's attorney. May we also identify that Mr. Frosh says the same thing regarding the 5th. The court, Mr. Frosh, is that your answer? Yes. And the 5th is only on that subject. Mosty says, so now we can't even find out who was involved. They wanted to find out what cop put it there, who was listening. They wanted to make them all take the 5th. That's what they wanted to do. See, so Mosty, just a minute. Well, Mosty's talking about my inquiry. I want to know who else was involved. The state ought to know. This is exculpatory evidence. This ought to be turned over. They want to know who else helped with the bugging. If the state knows who is involved, please inform the defense, Mosty says. I mean, first, there ought to be an investigation going on in Dallas County as we speak about this. Oh, the dramatics. There was an investigation, and you can't expect the right to privacy in a public setting. Well, there may very well be one, but right now we're at trial in Kerrville. We have completed this hearing, and it's 5 minutes until 9. And at 9 o'clock, I intend to continue the cross-examination of Darlie Routier, or the direct examination by Mr. Davis. When is the state going to give me that information? I mean, it's not going to do me much good in May. The court, well, the state, Mr. Mosty, we understand that Mr. Davis, should you learn the information, please give it to the defense as soon as possible. Yes, sir, I will. And are they under duty to inquire? Yes, they have to find out. I just want to be clear because if he never asked him, he might not never know it. They want to be sure to ask who was involved in the bugging. So the court ordered that they have to do that. Now, Mr. Hagler is another defense attorney. Your Honor, I will be very brief here with the court. Your Honor, I just wanted to, just so that we are clear on the ruling, Your Honor, it's our understanding that if the ruling of both, of course, Frosh and Patterson have invoked their Fifth Amendment privilege against self-incrimination under the Fifth Amendment, he wanted to make sure and get that out there. We further understand that the court's ruling that in light of the invocation of the Fifth Amendment right, that we are prohibited from inquiring from those officers, and I assume other officers who may be involved in this intercept. Let that sit in for a minute, Tara. That we are prohibited from inquiring from these two officers, and I assume other officers who may be involved in this intercept. As to the one, we are prohibited from cross-examining and questioning officers regarding the intercept and all facts surrounding the intercept. That's correct. And furthermore, if we were given the opportunity to question the officers, we would go into matters such as procedures utilized, who made the decision to initiate the intercept, the individuals involved in the intercept, how it was conducted, and any and all information that was learned through the intercept, including matters, not only those matters on the tape, but also matters that may have been overheard and not recorded by the officers. Anything to do with the bug. They can't ask about any of that. All right, and furthermore, Your Honor, we would submit to the state. The state has made the assertion that there was no exculpatory matters on the tape. And again, we would urge that it's not for the state to make that decision. It's one that only the court can make, and the only one that we can bring to light through cross-examination and confrontation of the witness. All right, thank you. And finally, Your Honor, we would ask for mistrial based on lack of opportunity to cross-examine the witness regarding this, and the fact that we cannot question Mr. Patterson regarding these matters. Court, all right, thank you. Now, you had you made those objections prior to the ruling, the court's ruling would still have been the same. Regarding the motion for mistrial, the motion for mistrial is denied. And with that in mind, Mr. Greg Davis says, also, before the jury comes in, remember, if I could inform the court that during the break I delivered to Mr. Mulder and Mr. Mosty the names of the two officers who I was informed actually did the taping. So now they have those names. Mr. Mulder says, I would like the names of those co-conspirators in the record, if we might. I think the names have been delivered, Mr. Mulder. Thank you. And that's it. They didn't ask Chris Frost anything else. They didn't ask him. And they could have, but they didn't. It was only on those matters. Only on the matters of the tape.
I mean, the things that we know about Jimmy Patterson today are not very pleasant to hear.
What do you know about Jimmy Patterson today? He still works for Rowlett Police Department today. He's a lieutenant now today. Officer of the Year in Texas, 2024. So what do you know about him today? It's not very pleasant. That's very pleasant, winning Officer of the Year.
We know that he was a very corrupt individual.
They're very corrupt. Now, how do you know this? Give us an example. Where's your very corruptness at? Give us an example.
We know now that he was, because he used to be a narcotics officer prior to being a lead detective in a double homicide, but which I find to be a little bit strange as well.
Why do you find that to be a little bit strange? Cops move around from area to area. They go from corporal to lieutenant to homicide. They move around. They work in law enforcement. Not specific. Why do you find that strange? Maybe he didn't want to be in narcotics. Why do you find that strange?
But I do know, and what we know now is that he was paid, for all intents and purposes, hush money to look the other way when he was a narcotics officer, and just different various things. Now,
It was different various things. Says that a lot. He was paid hush money, and you know it, but he's still an officer. Where are these charges? Who made these charges? That's just bullshit you're pulling out of your ass.
he pleaded the fifth. He pleaded the fifth at trial when it was talking about the surveillance that they were doing at the cemetery on the Routiers. And
Right.
He pleaded the fifth on that. Now, this is my opinion, folks. Even though it's a bit minute as far as the relevance of the case, the thing that really gets to me about it, you're the lead homicide detective in a double homicide and an attempted homicide.
Actually, it was only a homicide charge. If you want to go be technical and play semantics.
And you're pleading the fifth?
Yes. Because he was accused of a crime. Yes. I don't know where you don't understand that.
You're the one
Not only,
that's supposed
not
to be
only that,
giving
Rich.
all the information.
Not
Now,
only that, Rich. He didn't know any of the information. So,
that's right.
so even what he did testify to, he didn't actually know anything that was going on. He's meant to be the head of the case. He's meant to be the lead investigator.
Exactly who put it there. Him and Frosh went and asked Rest Haven, could they do it? Him and Frosh. Can we please put this urn here? What do you mean he didn't know?
He knew
Two,
nothing about what was going on, and he
two,
didn't even take any notes. People actually
He didn't take notes, but when he went in and questioned Darlie, Jimmy Patterson absolutely did not take any notes. You're right. He was asked on the stand if he took notes. And he said no. Because Chris Frost was sitting there with him, and Chris Frost took the notes. Duh. Read the testimony.
approached him at the crime scene about the dark black / car, suspicious car in the area. He didn't write it down. He didn't tell anyone.
Know about it. How do you know that she approached Jimmy Patterson? Karen Neal approached Jimmy Patterson, said she'd seen this black car. That's in the testimony. But she couldn't give a make, a model, a license plate, who was in it, nothing. So what is he supposed to do with that information? Stop every car?
Anyone else to write it down. He didn't know what was going on, and he's meant to be the person
Know what was going on. And how could he provide a cover up like you guys assume over the years?
who is the hub of the investigation.
The hub of the investigation, you guys claim, is James Cron. Well, he came in there and said in 20 minutes that nobody broke in that house. He calls tunnel vision.
He should know everything that's going on. He didn't talk to any.
He's the one that wrote the arrest warrant. He's the one that wrote to get the true bill. He wrote that up.
Any emergency services. He didn't even talk to first responders.
How do you know he didn't talk to first responders? How do you know? They all work in the same department. How do you know he didn't talk to them people? Are you stupid? He obviously talked to those people because he wouldn't have been able to write up the arrest warrant.
He read people's supplement reports, and that's all he did. He didn't actually talk.
So what? So what? That's what Labor and Epstein were going to do. That's what DeMaio did. He read supplementary reports and got up on the stand and said, "Oh, Darlie couldn't have done this." So what?
Talk to them and say, you know, what happened? What did you see? What did you hear? Nothing.
Yes, he did. It's in the arrest report. He talked to all of them.
Well, he didn't follow up on leads either.
Yes, he did. Because he's going to say something about Chad Patterson here right now, and he learned this from me.
No.
There's many statements made that, you know, he would get a lead or a tip in the case and he'd just crinkle it up and throw it in the trash can.
Statements made like that. There's always a trash can around him when he's getting these statements, too. Many statements. Can you name one? Can you name one?
We didn't like what it had to say. Now, I'm sorry, folks, it's BS.
Yeah, we know it's BS, Rich. We know.
And as far as him pleading the fifth, in my opinion, everything else, and two New York City homicide detectives agree with me on this because I've heard him say it, that everything else that he would have said in the trial should have been thrown out of court.
No. There's no no. What they said on the wrong man was they've never seen lead detective take the fifth. They've never seen it. But they don't go on to say, hey, have you ever seen a lead detective be accused of a crime by the defense on the stand?
Just the whole case should have got thrown out of court by that point.
That's right. Exactly.
That's wishful thinking, right? That's what they were trying for, right? Just throw it out. No matter if she killed them kids or not, just throw it out. Because this man is exerting his right to take the Fifth Amendment since he was accused of a crime in open court. Just throw it out. Let them know. That's just, that's stupidity.
You've got two of the lead investigators, two of the lead investigators pleading the fifth. One doing half testimony.
Yeah, he did half a testimony because Mulder was asking him about, certain things with the crime, about towels, he was asking, and then he's stopped asking him questions about the crime and accused him of a crime. That's when it all changes up. Now you've accused him of a crime. It has nothing to do with Darlie Routier anymore. It's got to do with Jimmy Patterson and the law. He accused him of a crime.
Which was all up from his memory, most of it.
Well, what are you doing stuff from? Do you have any sheets right there with you?
And the other not even testifying.
He didn't testify because he wasn't asked anything. He didn't say, I'm not going to testify. He said, I'm not going to testify about that.
Yeah.
Along with the crime scene, the Rowlett Police Department's main crime scene officer didn't testify either.
I think she's talking about Sergeant Dave Neighbors. No, he wasn't asked to testify. Had he been asked, he would have. The defense could have called him up anytime they wanted. They didn't.
Yeah, it's craziness. Absolute craziness. Bonnie, if you could continue reading, please.
An appeal court in 2001 took the view that the Routier family did not have a subjective expectation of privacy at a public cemetery, and they did invite a TV crew to be there.
That's one reason. If you're crying about your privacy, our privacy was violated, you're going to invite the city news to come and film you when you're expecting some kind of privacy That's okay. I mean, they did pay for that footage by paying for hotel costs of the family that came in. Hey, big wing, cha-ching for us. That's one of the big things that they got denied for.
Well, okay. I mean that appeal court. Um, I know what they're talking about there. And one moment, please.
But if that
I,
was the case, then why would they plead the fifth? If that was the case, why
well,
plead the fifth?
because the
If it
court
didn't
just
incriminate
found
them, if it
that
was
the
No. When you take the fifth, you're saying that whatever you are about to speak on could tend to incriminate you. I have explained back in 96, we didn't have film like we have now. Now it's perfectly clear that you can film anywhere in public. Anything the eyes can see on a public property. All right. Let's say they didn't ask Rest Haven and they stood on the sidewalk on the other side of Rest Haven, but they could see in. Even if they had a heavy duty camera that could pick up, they could stand there legally on the side of the road and film into there and record everything, and not a damn thing can be done about it. But they asked Rest Haven, could they come on their property, which means they had permission.
legal, if it was a legal thing that they did, and like, because it's not, because you have to get a warrant for things like that.
You don't have to get a warrant if you ask the people that own the place. Okay, can we record in here? You don't have to have a warrant. Now, I'll go back to, the mafia, the mob, when they bugged those apartments and they bugged the Ravenite and they bugged them. They always had to get a warrant. They had to get a warrant. That's permission from a judge. But they were in private places to get those warrants. In public, you don't need a warrant.
If it was legal, which it wasn't, but anyway.
Oh, yes, it was. Are you saying that the district court got it wrong? Now, here's from FindLaw.com. Key versus City of Rowlett, Texas, 2001, where they tried to sue them. They tried to capitalize off of that. Darlie Key, Darren Routier, plaintiffs and appellates versus the City of Rowlett, Texas, Jimmy Ray Patterson, Chris Frosh, Greg Davis, Assistant District Attorney for Dallas defendants. Appellees. Plaintiffs, appellants, Darlie Key and Darren Routier appeal the district court's grant of summary judgment in favor. That means the district court found that they did anything illegal. The district court held that the placement of electronic surveillance microphone at an outdoor gravesite memorial service, which intercepted Key and Routier's communications, did not violate constitutional or statutory rights, and therefore did not provide a predicate for their claims under 42 U.S.C. 1983 and 18 U.S.C. 2511. The district court reasoned that Key and Routier failed to demonstrate that they possessed a reasonable expectation of privacy regarding their oral communications at the gravesite for memorial service. For the following reasons, we affirm. On June 14th, 1996, Darlie Key and Darren Routier attended a gravesite memorial service for Damon Routier and Devin Routier, two minor children who were murdered on June 6th, 1996 in Rowlett, Texas. Key was the grandmother of the deceased children. Routier was the father of the deceased children. Darlie Routier, the children's mother, was convicted of capital murder for the children's deaths. Jimmy Ray Patterson and Chris Frosh, police officers in the city of Rowlett, were assigned to investigate the murders. As part of the investigation, an electronic surveillance wiretap was placed in a funeral urn in close proximity to the children's graves. The officers did not obtain a judicial warrant or court order, nor did they obtain the family's consent before placing their surveillance at the gravesite. However, the officers did obtain permission from the owners of the cemetery to enter and conduct their surveillance. Had they not done that, you might have a little bit of an issue. The gravesite at issue was a privately owned plot of land situated in an outdoor and publicly accessible cemetery. The electronic surveillance device consisted of a microphone planted in an urn which recorded sounds and conversations at the gravesite. The microphone recorded the surrounding area sounds of the gravesite for approximately 14 hours. Police also videotaped the activities at the gravesite. Due to the notoriety of the murders and subsequent investigation, the news media and public were aware of the planned memorial services. News reporters from local televisions and newspapers attended and observed portions of the activity at the gravesite. Family members, including Key and Routier and other invited guests, participated in services, prayers, and conversations at the gravesite. The summary judgment evidence fails to detail how many people attended the gravesite, who was in attendance, whether there was more than one memorial service during the day, and when media observers were present, and what conversations were recorded. The existence of surveillance recordings was first discovered by Key and Routier during the capital murder trial of Darlie Routier. At the trial, Patterson testified to the placement of the microphone surveillance at the gravesite. So Patterson said it was there. Patterson also testified that the device was planted in an urn beside the gravesite in case someone went up to her and made a confession about what happened. Upon learning the existence of the surveillance recordings, Key and Routier brought suit against those individuals and entities allegedly involved in taping of their conversation. The district court held that Key and Routier had not demonstrated that they had a subjective expectation of privacy in their conversations at the gravesite. Now, let's say that they put up a big tent over the gravesite and they had their little party inside that sealed tent. If somebody stuck a recorder up under that tent to record, they have a reasonable expectation of privacy because they put up the tent. They didn't think anybody was going to slide a recorder in there. They put up a tent. It's like if you see a First Amendment auditor filming inside of a police car, they do that all the time. They say, the cops say, you can't film in there. There's stuff on my computer. Well, it's up to the cop to shut that computer when he gets out of the car. So it's not out there for the world to see. Anything your eyes can see.
Anyway, let's, for argument's sake, say it was legal for them to do that.
It was legal for them to do that. Not for argument's sake. Let's say, this is where you need to stick. You took a criminal law course, something?
Then why would they plead the fifth? They
pled the fifth because they were accused of a crime. They were accused of a crime.
They wouldn't have to, because they're not in the wrong and they're not doing anything against the law.
And they wanted to find out about that later. Courthouse in Kerrville.
So
Yeah,
that whole argument is just nonsense.
Well, I got one better for you. The actual judge at the trial was the one that suggested to Jim Patterson to plead the fifth. Now,
absolutely, because the judge knows the law. Now, listen to what this world-renowned investigator who studies and investigates hundreds of cases. Listen to what he says here.
What the hell is that?
That's him maintaining the decorum in his courtroom. Is exactly what it is.
A lot of people said, no, that judge in no way was biased at all. Wasn't it Zab Girl that said not too long ago? And the cast that she has, that she noticed when she was going through the trial transcripts, that everything at all the at the trial always was going toward the prosecution. Anytime
Why Jimmy Patterson and Chris Frosh pled the fifth, and it wasn't in front of the jury because the judge knew what it was, and they wanted to do it outside of the jury. Also, some of Helena's testimony was done outside the presence of the jury.
defense would object, it would go for the prosecution. The prosecution would object to something, it would go for the prosecution. And also at the same time, you got Jimmy Patterson pleading the fifth under the suggestion for him to do so by the judge as well.
The judge said, do you understand this federal law? And Jimmy says, well, I'm not real clear on it. He said, well, maybe you better get a lawyer and figure it out. Because it wasn't real clear back then.
I mean, I don't get nothing.
Just think of this. Just think of it like this. Let's say that they recorded Darlie going, oh my God, I'm sorry I did this to you on that. I'm sorry I did this to you. Or forgive me for killing you or something like that. If it was illegal, what would Jimmy Patterson be able to do with that? Because if she would have confessed to it, Jimmy Patterson would have took it straight to the court and said, look at this evidence I got. And it would have been found just evidence, because you can't expect privacy in a public setting.